Though no battles took place here during the Civil War, the roads that brought so many travelers to town also carried both the Union and Confederate armies right by our doors. First, the boys in blue passed through on their way to Gettysburg in the summer of 1863. A 13-year-old girl by the name of Maggie Mering left us a journal which has the best description of this. She was a student boarding at Mrs. Clayfish's Academy, located in the old Presbyterian manse on High Street. One night she watched out her window as the town was transformed into a temporary garrison, and a little later she picked up her pen.
Tuesday evening, June 30th, 1863. As we were eating our suppers yesterday evening, Cousin Annie came in and said that there was a squad of cavalry crossing the creek and would be in town in a few moments. They proved to be General Gregg's Union escort and were only the advance guard of about 60 men. A little after dark, 5,400 passed through. They were dressed very nicely and rode handsome horses. It was a beautiful sight. 2 of the 60 cavalry and the advance guard slept in the churchyard. There was not any of us that slept very much last night.
Some units set up camp on the Atlee House lawn and wherever else they could find open space around town, but most stayed on the march north to Taneytown. Soon after passing through New Windsor that night, a New York cavalryman managed to send a letter to his family. He wrote,
"A small but beautiful village, New Windsor. It was about 10 o'clock when we arrived there. The moon shined beautifully as we looked over the place, so still it reminded me of some moonlight picture. I think it is the prettiest place I ever saw."
When the next evening came, young Maggie Mering continued to describe the unfolding events in her journal.
There was a soldier buried in the Presbyterian graveyard this morning. He died from exhaustion. Thursday evening, July 2nd. There were 150 government wagons passed through the upper part of town this morning. We heard the cannon booming very distinctly last night, and it is supposed that there is a battle going on between Littlestown and Gettysburg.
Well, what young Maggie heard was the famous Battle of Gettysburg being fought, a little over 20 miles from town. The following summer, on July 9th, it was the turn of the boys in gray to visit the town. 500 Confederate cavalry arrived on a daring mission designed by General Robert E. Lee himself. They were to destroy railroad bridges and cut telegraph wires above and below Baltimore to disrupt communication between Washington and the North. Then they were to move on to Point Lookout at the tip of Maryland's western shore. Here, 15,000 Confederate troops were imprisoned, and freeing them would help bolster the Confederate Army's thinning ranks. The arduous task would require lots of fresh horses and supplies. When the troops arrived in New Windsor, they sought new mounts, saddles, and harnesses. Many of the local men and boys quickly hid their animals in area thickets and ravines when they heard about the approaching troops. Some rebels fired shots at fleeing wagons and buggies. And to her dying day, a Mrs. Gilbert in town claimed that she had been wounded by a bullet. She had her son Luther on her lap, and she said the bullet passed through her hand and grazed the child's breast. But some folks in these parts thought that this just might be a bit of an exaggeration. I guess we'll never know for sure. The leader of those Confederates was an Ivy League-educated lawyer and a local boy from Frederick, General Bradley T. Johnson. As he rode up Bath Street, he happened to recognize a woman who was standing on the porch of a house across from the bank. She was an old acquaintance, a Mrs. Stouffer. He asked her if she lived there. When she said yes, he told his orderly to plant the Confederate flag in the front yard, and he made the house his headquarters. While General Johnson rested, his troops looted the town's stores of hats, shoes, tobacco, and anything else they could carry off. No one was seriously hurt, but things did get pretty hectic. The store across the street from Johnson's headquarters was owned by Mrs. Stouffer's husband, Daniel, and at her insistence, the general put a stop to the looting there by posting guards. However, other stores in town, including one owned by Stouffer's cousin, Ezra, were picked clean. The irony here is that the unfortunate Ezra was a Southern sympathizer, while the coddled Daniel was known to support the Union cause. There were no cameras handy, but my brother Frederick sketched the Confederate raid. We were so proud when his drawing appeared in an edition of Leslie's Illustrated Newspaper. After the war, Frederick illustrated editions of poetry by Longfellow and Hawthorne. He even produced designs for 2 mosaic panels for the Library of Congress in Washington, and later became president of the National Academy of Design and a professor of drawing at 2 New York art schools. Now, where was I? Oh, right, the Civil War.